All right, welcome my friends to episode 751 of Extreme Health Radio. Thank you so much for being a part of the show and for listening. I know there's a million different podcasts out there, so the fact that you're listening to this show and to my show really means a lot to me. So I really appreciate that. What I'm going to be doing is putting links to everything I talk about on today's show at extremehealthradio.com/751. And I'm going to be changing things up slightly here on the show, and for a number of different reasons. One of which is I want to get Kate back on the show. And a lot of you guys have been messaging me on Instagram asking if she can be back on the show. And, you guys loved it when she was on. And I love having her back on. But to be honest, I don't know if any of you guys have twins, but if you have twins and you're listening right now, you know just how intense it is to have twins. And so it's pretty challenging. Whenever we do get help, which is pretty rare, we, try to clean up the house or run errands or do something like that. So it's really challenging to get extra help to also record shows. So we're going to try to get her back on the show. I'd really like to do like twice a month with her, because I think it's really fun to just kind of sit down and just have a conversation about what's going on in the world. With Kate, and I know you guys like it as well. And then the other thing I'm going to be doing maybe twice a month is doing deeper dives into the health challenges that I'm doing research for. And so I don't know if you guys know, but if you don't follow us on Instagram, I haven't really talked about it anywhere else. But what we're going to be doing here in the future is launching a brand new sort of upgraded Patreon community. And what we're going to be offering on there is solution-based research that I'm doing on particular health conditions. So I've done one on diabetes. I've done one on high blood pressure, heart disease, heart health, cancer, skin health. Today's show is going to be all about bone health and remineralizing your bones. So obviously this has an effect on your oral health and your teeth health as well. But I'm doing deeper dives into each one of these different areas. I did one on vision as well. And so I'm going to be doing one on brain health. I got a list a mile long of different health conditions and different areas of the body that I want to focus on. And so I'm really excited about it because I love doing research and I love looking at different aspects of health and how we can find answers to these health problems. And like you probably know that I have so many, access to so much different information when it comes to health, like things that most people never think about, or having been involved in this since 2003, I really have a unique approach, I think, to coming up with some solutions. And so at first I was calling these like protocols, but they're not really protocols because they're not really designed to follow like a step-by-step, progression of what you would do in these certain situations. So what I'm calling these is just extreme health guides, I guess. And they're designed to throw everything at the kitchen sink or throw everything on the wall for what I would do if I were diagnosed, if my body was diagnosed with a certain condition. So the one I did on skin cancer was really cool. Lots of, unique substances that you can do internally and externally for skin cancers. And so I am going to be doing a couple shows a month on that, and then a couple shows with Kate. And so I hope it's a good balance, and we're going to be moving away from interviews for a while. But if you're subscribed to the show, you'll get our past interviews 6 days a week. And then I'm going to be just diving really deep into these sort of guides or protocols for what you can do for these particular health conditions. So that's the kind of direction that we're going to go for a while, but just because I love researching, and I'm really excited about doing the research on these and hopefully coming up with some solutions, because that's really the ultimate goal for me, is to give you guys some solutions. And so like in this particular one, I've got so many solutions in the protocol or the guide that I created. I'm only going to be highlighting a few of them here. But so yeah, today's show is about bone health in general. And I try to steer clear of using words like osteoporosis or osteopenia, that type of thing, because those words have been sort of hijacked. And those are brand names, really, is what they are. And those words are protected. And so you can't really say that any nutrient or substance or mineral or vitamin can impact that particular word, right? Osteoporosis is a protected term. And so just as it's cancer is as well. So I'm going to be sharing some things about how to rebuild bones and have healthy bones, healthy, strong, flexible bones. And I first got really kind of did a deep dive into this maybe 15, 20 years ago, probably 15 years ago, actually, when my mom was diagnosed with this. And I put her on a lot of, minerals and stuff like that at the time. And fortunately, she made a full recovery. And so this is really kind of cool information to know that you have autonomy and you have power over your physiology and your body to heal, which is really cool. And so what I love about that is that people, when they realize they can turn around health conditions using natural methods and not pharmaceutical drugs, that gives you a lot of power in your hands, realizing, wow, I can probably do this with any health condition. And so it's really, really empowering. So I think it's awesome to be able to do this and to be able to have access to this type of information. And again, like I said, I love researching and sharing some ideas with you. So hopefully some of the things I mentioned in today's episode will help you guys. And so bone density typically is in our peak in our early 20s, when our hormones are sort of raging and we're early on in life. That's when we have our peak bone density. And so around 10 million Americans have osteoporosis, which is crazy, right? It's a lot of people. 44 million have low bone density in general. And so typically if you go to a doctor, you get a test. It's usually the T-score test. And if it's negative 2.5 or below, they typically say that you now have osteoporosis, which is a sort of side rant. But whenever a doctor tells you that you have something, just realize that it's your job to turn nouns into verbs. Because whenever you're diagnosed with something, it's a snapshot in time, right? If I take a photo of you, and then 3 weeks later, I see you may have shaved your head, you may have grown your hair, dyed your hair, you may have put on some weight. That's just a snapshot in time. So as soon as the photo is done being taken of you, you're a different person. And so the same goes true with any test that you get. Just realize that you're a dynamic being and your levels of certain minerals and, different things they're going to be checking in your blood are always going to be dynamic and changing. So just know that. So back in the day, we had, what was his name? Dr. William Wong, and he always referenced Wolff's Law. And that is the idea that natural healthy bones will adapt and change, and they'll adapt to the stress that they're subjected to. So if the bones are subjected to heavier and heavier, like weight loads or, loads of weight that you put on them, they will naturally reconstruct themselves to accommodate that weight. And this is how bones typically respond to stress. And so whenever you're dealing with someone who has osteoporosis or bone loss, it tells me right away that their bones are not under a stress and muscle is attached to bone. And so we'll talk about exercise a little bit later, but essentially Wolff's Law is that idea that bones will naturally adapt and change to the stress they're put under. And so if you're dealing with this right now, osteoporosis or a family member or friend, just know it may take, a year to, I've heard as, year to 3 years. I've heard as far as 6 years to rebuild your bones. It may take less depending on how adaptive you are and how much you really go into these things and really try them. So it does take time. So give it time. So one of the things that I always thought was interesting was when people would say, well, I've got osteoporosis, so I need to take calcium. And, and I just need to increase my calcium. And typically people are taking the wrong forms of calcium that are causing, other issues, calcification of their organs and things like that, heart attacks and strokes and stuff. And there's a lot of studies showing that taking the wrong form of calcium can do that. But when we look at bone, we look at, what they're comprised of. And roughly a third of your bone is filled or consists of collagen and lipids. Another third is H2O, which is which is kind of odd, right? Like water and bone, but a third of your bones are water. And then the other third are minerals. And so only 1/3 of your bone consists of minerals, which is really interesting to know that another third of your bone is collagen and lipids. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But so now of the minerals that are in your bone, roughly 48% is calcium. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to tell you about sauna therapy. And I don't know if you guys do sauna therapy on a regular basis. I do. I've been doing so for 10 years. And the sauna that I love the most and have been using all this time is the Relax Far Infrared Sauna. And what I love about the sauna is that A, it's cost effective. It doesn't cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 like most other saunas. It's portable, which means if you have a tight space, you can store underneath your bed. After each use, you can put it in the closet, or you can even loan it to a friend. It's very low EMF. It uses far infrared light though, which helps to increase circulation, increase cardiovascular output, increase heat shock proteins, which has a direct effect on immune cell function. It also helps improving lymphatic drainage and, most importantly, sweating out toxins that you're exposed to on a daily basis. This is by far my favorite health piece of equipment I have in my home. I'll put a link to it on today's show page or on our store, biochargeme.com. So just because something has calcium doesn't mean you need to take calcium in order for calcium to be there, right? There's this biological transmutation that needs to occur through different minerals in order for calcium to be produced. And so in the same way that cholesterol is in the arteries doesn't mean cholesterol is causing the heart attacks, right? So, but of the minerals, still less than half is calcium. And then there's phosphorus around 37%, magnesium about 1.29%, silicon is about 0.12%, and iron is about 0.09%. Then you have other trace minerals like zinc and copper, boron, selenium, magnesium, and those types of things. And so just know that, it's not like you need to start loading up on calcium supplements in order to build strong bones. It goes much deeper than that. And so I'm going to share with you some studies of the different things that I would do for, if I were diagnosed with osteoporosis. And we're going to cover about 9 of them today, I think. In my protocol, I've got, I think, over 20. So I don't want to go that long in this particular podcast, but just kind of highlight some of these so that you guys can take a look and learn more. So the first thing that I would get on if I were diagnosed with this, if my body was diagnosed with this, is a little known mineral that you probably never heard of called strontium. And here I have a clinical trial called strontium remineralize, a new treatment for postmenopausal osteoporosis with a dual mode of action. And this is, let's see, what year is this? It doesn't say the year. Oh, wait, yeah, 2005, March 2005. And then I won't read the whole thing to you, but I'll read the final results. And it says here that results show that strontium remineralize is a new, effective, and safe treatment for vertebral and hip osteoporosis with a unique mode of action, increasing bone formation and decreasing bone respiration, leading to a rebalance of bone turnover in favor of overall bone formation. So this is something that, your doctor's going to tell you to take Fosamax and to, make sure you have enough fluoride, right? Like take your calcium. But does your doctor know about strontium? Probably not, right? And you can get strontium in different, doses and stuff like that. And I'll talk more about that later. But then the other mineral I would definitely start ingesting is magnesium. And here's a study from 1996. Magnesium deficiency, a possible role in osteoporosis associated with gluten sensitivity. And it goes into the whole abstract and then the full article here, but I'll just read you a sentence out of it. It says here, magnesium therapy resulted in a rise in PTH, parathyroid hormone, suggesting that the intracellular magnesium deficient was impairing PTH secretion in these patients. And the increase in bone density in response to magnesium therapy suggests that magnesium depletion may be one factor contributing to overall osteoporosis. So magnesium, we know, runs roughly, 3,700 enzymes. Basically, your liver, which has over 500 functions, enzymes attributed to it, runs on magnesium. It's required for ATP production, for chelating heavy metals, for converting thyroid hormone in the liver. So magnesium is required for everything. And so, it's not just 300 different enzymes, it's 3,700 of your roughly, I think, 9,000 enzymes. So that's 40% of your metabolism requires magnesium. And so it's really important to make sure that you're not magnesium deficient. And we know that it's the first mineral lost due to stress. So I don't know about you guys, but it's been incredibly stressful, like gas prices going up, world wars, all the, Great Reset, all this craziness going on in the world today. It's insanely stressful. And if you have kids, it's even more stressful. If you have a job, it's more stressful. It's just really stressful right now. And so making sure you're getting enough magnesium is really important. So that's what I would do. And then the next one is vitamin K2. And here's a study, October 2009, the effect of menaquinone 7 vitamin K2 supplementation on osteocalcin, carboxylation in healthy prepubertal children. And it says here, vitamin K contributes to bone health, probably through its role as a cofactor in the carboxylation of osteocalcin. And it says here, these findings demonstrate that in healthy children, modest supplementation with MK7 increases circulating concentrations of MK7 and increases osteocalcin carboxylation. So vitamin K has like the list of benefits of this is endless. And I really recommend having this be something that you're on an ongoing basis. But essentially what it does is it helps create energy in the mitochondria, ATP production, but it also helps distribute calcium where it belongs. And it really gets it out of the soft tissues, which is not where you want calcium. You want it in the bone. And so vitamin K2 is really incredible for doing that. And so I would make sure to get on vitamin K as well. And here's another study, high dose vitamin K supplementation reduces fracture incidence in postmenopausal women. And this is from April 29th, 2009. And it says here, a high dose vitamin K and vitamin K or K1 and K2 supplementation improve incidences of bone strength in the femoral neck and reduce the incidence of clinical fractures. The review of the reliable literature confirmed the effect of vitamin K1 and vitamin K2 supplementation on skeletal and postmenopausal women mediated by the mechanisms other than bone mineral density and bone turnover. So what you want is you want the calcium to go where it belongs, and it belongs not in the soft tissues. And so it's really important to make sure that you're doing vitamin K. So I just think it's so interesting that when you ever talk to a doctor about, minerals and vitamins, and they just sort of poo-poo you, right? They kind of just say, oh, well, you need to be on Fosmax or you need to be on whatever else, supplementation. Make sure there's fluoride in your water, take your calcium, take your vitamin D, but, really the medication is where it's at. But it's just like they're not reading the literature at all. And here's one. I just watched a really interesting video on boron the other day. I read that paper a long time ago called "There's Nothing Boring About Boron," and so I watched a video. There's a lecture the other day that I can put it in the show notes too. That was really interesting, going into the instance of bone health, osteoporosis, osteopenia, arthritis, and other bone cancers and stuff like that around the world, and looking at the soils and how much boron is in the soils around the world. And, you look at places like Jamaica, who it's my understanding has the least amount of boron in their soils, and they have the incidence of osteoporosis and osteopenia just going through the roof. Whereas places like Israel have abundant amounts of boron. And, 80-year-old men, he said in the lecture, 85-year-old men and women are walking around straight. They're not hunched over. They haven't shrunk in size. They don't fall. They don't fracture their bones, and this is because of boron. And the problem with boron, though, is that it typically is recommended in like 2 to 3, or is it 2 to 4, 2 to 3 milligrams, 2 to 4 milligrams, I forget, in most supplements. And what you really need, according to this lecture I listened to, is you need around 30 to 70 milligrams a day of boron. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're getting enough boron. And here's a study from Open Access Text. And it's titled, this is from, it doesn't say the date, does it? No, it doesn't say the date. But this is called Boron Action in Bone Health. It gives the abstract and it gives the introduction and all that good stuff. And it's a really interesting paper. But I found this this paragraph here. It says, in vitro studies with cultures of osteoblastic cells also demonstrated that boron is beneficial for maintaining and bone formation by stimulating bone mineralization and still increasing levels of mRNA related to bone growth as type 1 collagen. So remember, we talked a little bit earlier about how collagen is abundant in bones, and most people don't think about that. So the conclusion was the evidence highlights the essential of boron in the normal development of the skeleton, maintenance of bone health throughout life, and beneficially influences minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D. And also, this mineral plays a significant role in shaping steroid hormones that related to bone health, especially in women after menopause. So strontium, boron, I mean, do your doctors know about these things? Probably not. I mean, most people have heard about magnesium, but they don't really know much about it. So, but these are things that you can get, you can buy these at the health food store. You can, find them online. And I really recommend, looking into this research. So again, what I'm doing with the Patreon protocols is I'm putting all this research there, but you know what? I'll share that more in a minute. Here's one on copper. So this is something that most people don't think about when it comes to bone health, because we talked about how a third of bone is made up of collagen, and copper helps so many different aspects of the body, but it also helps stimulate or turn on the enzyme lysyl oxidase, which helps collagen and elastin to be sort of stitched together so that they work properly. So a lot of people are taking gelatin, but they're not taking copper with it. So when you take the copper with the gelatin, then all of a sudden that gelatin becomes in a matrix that your body can use. And so it activates that to be utilized for bone formation, for strong tissues and joints and all that good stuff. So when you're taking your gelatin, in your coffee, or maybe you're making bone broth soups with hopefully you're doing both. But when you're doing the gelatin, also do the copper as well. And here's a paper from a Rheumatology Advisor, August of 2021, entitled Copper Intake Positively Associated with Bone Mineral Density and Negatively Associated with Osteoporosis Risk. So this is really interesting too, because most people don't think about copper, right? Copper has so many uses. We've done entire shows with Morley about how copper runs your immune system. We did a whole show with Jason Hommel. We'll have him on again talking about the Copper Revolution, his book, which I would highly recommend you read. And when you start looking at how copper affects so many different aspects of the body, you can go down so many rabbit trails with what copper does. But it says here in conclusion, our results indicate that dietary and total copper intake was positively associated with increasing bone mineral density in U.S. adults and negative with the risk of osteoporosis in U.S. adults. The authors noted, furthermore, the results need to be confirmed with prospective data. The researchers, I love how they add that, more research is needed, right? Because it's like, oh no, with Jason's protocol on the Copper Revolution, you can buy a pound. If you're following me on Instagram, I put a link in our bio for this. It's under the Amazon recommended products, but you can buy 10 pounds of copper sulfate pentahydrate for, I think I paid like $20 for it for 10 pounds. And that will last you 20 years, 25 years with doing a high dose copper. And so you just can't beat that, right? It's like, you just cannot beat that in terms of, who's making money off this stuff, right? So copper should be a part of your overall bone formation strategy. So that's there. And so you can take a look at that if you guys want. And then here's another one, silicon. So we talked about how silicon was in the bone as well as a mineral. But here there's a paper from NIH from 2013 called Silicon, a review of its potential role in the prevention and treatment of postmenopausal osteoporosis. Now, I know when I do, talk about silicon and silica, this is going to sort of anger the Ray Peat community, but, the evidence is there. And so I don't really like to follow any one crowd really at all. So I like to just take the good things from, certain crowds. And then, if there's things I don't like, I don't follow that. But here, this is a really good paper. And I would really encourage you guys to read this from 2013. And it goes through the abstract and the introduction and the chemistry of silicon, as well as its role in bone formation. And I came across this under number 4, osteoporosis and silicon intake. It says here, diets containing more than 40 milligrams a day of silicon have been positively associated with increased femoral bone mineral density compared to dietary intake of less than 14 milligrams a day. A study of postmenopausal Scottish women determined the average daily intake of silicon was around 18.6 milligrams a day, which was lower than the standard British diet that contains approximately 30 milligrams a day. So dietary intake of silicon declines with age by approximately 0.1 milligrams per year. In a North American epidemiological study, none of the postmenopausal women achieved even 40 milligrams a day of dietary silicon intake. So silica, magnesium, these are all sort of minerals that are trace, not magnesium, but trace minerals that through biological transmutation become or turn into calcium inside the bone. And so silica is really, really powerful for building strong bones, for strong connective tissue, healthy skin. And so it's really important that you have these strong connective tissues because, like I was just mentioning earlier at this show, someone messaged me on Instagram about hernias. And one of the ways you build strong connective tissue is with silica. And so there's different products of silica that I recommend that I'll talk about later. But, stuff like this is really important to know. So, if you're looking to prevent and treat osteoporosis, I would definitely look at silica. Have you guys heard about systemic enzyme therapy or proteolytic enzymes? This is my secret weapon for battling inflammation. And we had a guest a long time ago, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who is using high-dose proteolytic enzymes on late-stage pancreatic cancer patients with great success. Serrapeptase is derived from the same bacteria that the Japanese silkworm uses to dissolve its own cocoon. And these are from MitoLife enteric-coated serrapeptase and nattokinase. The main method of action is to dissolve necrotic debris in the blood that shouldn't be there. Sort of like Pac-Man, going all throughout your blood and eating things up like scar tissue, fibrin, fibrosis, calcification, fibrinogen. And this takes a massive burden off your liver and your white blood cells. It can be used with anything that's inflammatory to lower inflammation, anything that ends in an itis or osis. You can even use it topically with DMSO. I've done that before with great success. This stuff is amazing. It's called Dissolve-It-All, and you can find it on biochargeme.com under the MitoLife section. And our code EHR15 will get you a 15% discount. And then we moving on to vitamin C intake in relation to bone mineral density as a risk of hip fracture and osteoporosis, a systematic review and meta-analysis of observational studies. This is from, what year is this? 2018. And it goes through a bunch of this data, but I found this near the bottom, and it says here, greater dietary vitamin C intake was associated with a 33% lower risk of osteoporosis. Greater dietary vitamin C intake was associated with a lower risk of hip fracture and osteoporosis, as well as a higher BMD, bone mineral density, at femoral, neck, and lumbar spine, which is where they test. And so this idea that we have to shrink as we get older, we have to lose 3 or 4 inches in height, this is a new thing. We were never meant to be bent over and hunched over with back pain, and losing vertebrae, and, losing height and having, bone issues like this. This is a new thing. And this is because our soils have been robbed of minerals. We've known this since the 1930s, when the farmers of America, complained about this to the U.S. government. I was reading a paper about that recently. This stuff has been known. And it's really important if you're just following a standard American diet right now, going along with what your doctor recommends, you're in bad shape. That's not good, because what's going to happen ultimately is that you're going to be put on more and more medications. And these medications have never, ever been studied together. And most of the time they always get recalled, right? And most all medications are screwing up your liver function always, because the liver has to be the primary organ of detoxifying these chemicals, these chemical alkaloids that have been, synthetically made in the lab. This is not natural for your body. And so it's really important that we get off of what they're trying to force feed us in the mainstream world, which is the standard American diet, which is killing us. And not only that too, but one thing I learned a long time ago was that sometimes our deficiencies aren't caused by a lack of consumption of something, but sometimes our deficiencies are caused by what we're actually eating. So in the last few years, I've been really diving into minerals and realizing that when you increase one mineral, you may lower another mineral, the antithesis of that mineral. And my friend Matt over at MitoLife always talks about how they're on a seesaw, right? So, these minerals work in tandem, and when one goes up, another one could go down. And the same goes with the standard American diet. When you're consuming just standard American food devoid of minerals, it's not like, oh, your body's not getting those minerals. You're actually stripping what minerals you do already have by eating that diet. And so that's why it's really important to start looking at mineral supplementation. And so those are some things: strontium, magnesium, calcium. I didn't talk about calcium, just a little bit about it, but I don't really focus too much on calcium. I just get it from raw dairy, butter, cheese, dairy products, stuff like that. There is, if you really want to get like a phosphorus calcium sort of synergistic combo that's in the right ratios, you might want to look at Ancestral Supplements has a bone product, which is just bone. So that might be something interesting to look at too, if you're looking at bioavailable calcium. But supplementing calcium, it's so easy to get that it's not really worth spending a lot of time on. So I like to focus on the strontium, the magnesium, the K2, vitamin D you can get from the sun. Unless you have that gene, the DHCR7 gene, which allegedly prevents you from making enough vitamin D. But, assuming you don't have that, so you can make vitamin D from the sun, boron, copper, collagen, silica, vitamin C, and those types of things. So I really recommend looking into those as a starting point, right? And some things that you want to make sure that you're doing as well is obviously like avoiding known toxicities like smoking, standard cigarettes, that kind of thing. My mom used to do that for years, and so that's going to be really damaging. And oddly enough, I found a really interesting paper on soda, colas, it says here. Excuse me. Colas. We don't want to name names, right? But it says here, sorry about that. I'm recording this late at night. This is 2006. And it says here, colas, excuse me, but not carbonated beverages. I'm sorry, but not other carbonated beverages are associated with low bone mineral density in older women. And this is from the Framingham osteoporosis study. It says here, cola intake was associated with a significantly lower bone mineral density at each hip site, but not the spine in women, but not in men. The mean bone mineral density of those with daily cola intake was 3.7% lower at the femoral neck and 5.7 lower at the warts area than those who consumed less cola. And so the conclusion was the intake of cola, but not other carbonated beverages, is associated with low bone mineral density in women. So that's something that you want to look at, are you drinking those? I'm not going to name those names because they could sue me, but the major brands out there, the ones that we're raised on, right? With the red cans, you know what they are. So if you're drinking cola, make sure to get off that stuff, because that's, That stuff is ruining your bones. It's dissolving your bones. And look at anyone who drinks those on an ongoing basis, and you'll see what I mean. And so the other thing that people tell you is make sure you're on fluoride. Make sure there's fluoride in your toothpaste. There's got to be fluoride in your water. But here's an interesting paper from Science Direct: bone quality in fluoride exposed populations. Because that's the whole argument, right? Is that, fluoride's good for the bones, right? We did a whole show on fluoride like years ago, exposing the fraud that was. I forgot who we did that with, the doctor down in San Diego, I think. And it says a novel application of the ultrasonic method. So it goes through the background, objective method results, blah, blah, blah. And then it says here, the results are indicative of a fluoride-induced deterioration of bone quality in humans, likely reflecting a combination of factors related to SOS. That's just the, I forgot what that was called, but that's part of the study. Net bone loss, abnormal mineralization and collagen formation, or altered microarchitecture. So guys, ditch the fluoride, all right? I think you should know that by now. I'm sure you do. And then one other thing too, anytime you're taking pharmaceutical drugs and medications, always look up the side effects, guys, and do what you can to get off these things. So here's, the effect. Here's a paper from 2005 on the effects of low-dose prednisone on bone metabolism. This is here it says prednisone, 5 milligrams a day, suppresses multiple indices of bone formation in a randomized placebo-controlled trial in healthy postmenopausal females. This suggests that even low doses of prednisone may induce bone repair or renewal and may have adverse effects on bone mass and bone strength. And it says here, in conclusion, the low-dose prednisone significantly decrease indices of bone formation and may decrease bone reabsorption in postmenopausal women. So prednisone, Fosamax, all these things, do what you can to get off of these things, all right? So there you go. There's 9 things that you should do. So get off. So start taking those minerals that I mentioned, and start avoiding smoking, sodas, fluoride, prednisone. Some therapies I would consider are weight-bearing exercises, like I mentioned before. There's multiple studies on that. And that gets into Wolf's Law, which I referenced earlier. And I would really get into hardcore exercise if you can. You want to develop some bone mass, especially if you're, younger in life. If you're 30, 20, 30, 40 in that range, use this time to put on some muscle mass, men or women. And this will really, be a great benefit to you later on in life. And so it's important to do that because your bones will be stronger, and there's so many other benefits as well. If you're unable to sort of work out like I do, I work out all the time, like 3-4 days a week with weights, but I mean, the better situation is actually like chopping wood, working in the garden, these types of things. Body weight exercises are good, but if you can't do those things, then do something. You got to do something. You could do rebounding. That's good. Also vibration plates. Those are really good for helping stimulate bone formation. And so those are some therapies that you can consider doing as well. Some home things, you work out at home. So I hope that helped, I mean, with 10 million people, currently being already diagnosed with osteoporosis and 44 million people just in the US being, have issues with low bone mineral density. This is a real problem. And we were not meant, like I mentioned before, to lose 2-3 inches in height and to shrink as we get older and to, fall. Because many times when people fall, they're not like falling because they don't have balance. Their hip breaks and then they fall. And then they break another bone on their way down. And so this is the type of thing that I really think is important for older folks, or if you're younger and you're like me and you want to sort of, get on top of this stuff now, because if you need to do everything you can to avoid going to a hospital, really. So if that means working on your balance, if that means, doing some strengthening exercises in your ankles and your knees so that you're strong and you're stable, If that means not wearing shoes as much so that you can use those stabilizing muscles in your toes and in your feet so that you can be more balanced. If that means, doing leg exercises to make sure your legs are strong, so that we don't fall. Hey, have you guys tried Sir Thribal's colostrum yet? If you haven't, you totally should. I love this stuff. What I love about it, it has lactoferrin in it, which is a really powerful iron chelator. It also has retinoic acid, which is real vitamin A, which helps load copper into ceruloplasmin. It helps to seal your gut lining, improving digestion. It contains all essential fats, sugars, and amino acids. It's non-GMO, organic, grass-fed, and it also has transfer factor and immunoglobulins in it, so it modulates your immune system. Great for gut health. There's 4 flavors: the original, vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. I like the original myself. I add it to my smoothies, coffee, ice cream, pancakes, shakes. The kids love it. It's amazing stuff. Check it out on biochargeme.com. I mean, you look at what's going on right now. You fall and all of a sudden you break a bone, right? Or you break a bone, then you fall. Then you have to go to the hospital. And then all of a sudden, they test you for big C, little V, right? Oh, wow. But you have no symptoms at all. But now we're going to put you on on dialysis and a kidney thing and put you on a vent and, give you remdesivir and God knows what. And all of a sudden you're dead, right? Because because you broke a bone. I mean, I've heard stories like this all the time. For the last 2 years, I've heard so many stories just like that, where someone goes into the hospital for something, unrelated at all to big C, little V. And all of a sudden they're being, strapped to a bed and forced oxygen in their nostrils. And it's insane. It's insane. So, we've got to do everything we can to avoid going to hospitals at all. And so ultimately that comes down to taking responsibility for our health. And the current health that you have and that I express right now is the result of how we think, how we live, what we do, our environment, our actions, our habits, our lifestyle, our environment, all of that. And so it's really important to take note of that and take full ultimate responsibility over your health. So I highlighted 9 of these things here, but really there's, in my Patreon paper, there's 20 of them. And in this one, I have over 55 links to the substances, to take, like I mentioned, the strontium, the magnesium, where to get them. I linked to, or I added the dosing, what the studies are saying is in terms of dosing, and how long you should be on them, as well as I linked to articles and websites and testing if that's necessary, resources, lectures, video lectures, books, all that kind of stuff. And so, as well as tests as well, if that's applicable. And so that's what I'm doing on Patreon. So on Patreon, you can get access to this where, I lay it all out. And if you just pick a handful of these things, again, this isn't meant to be a protocol. It's more meant to be like, here are all the things that you can do. And I mentioned other things too. I'm not going to share them here, but lots of other things that you can do to stimulate bone health and bone strength as well. Because what we want is flexible bones, like a child. A child has like bones that bend a little bit. We don't want this calcified, super rigid, hard bone filled with calcium that can, break like glass. We don't want that. We want strong but flexible bone. Sort of like, a bamboo tree, right? It's super long. It looks super skinny, but in the wind, it blows and it bends no matter how much wind is being applied to it. And it's strong, but it's flexible. And that's ultimately what we want. We want to bring that, not the rigidity back into our bones and into our soft tissues, but we want to be strong and flexible. And that's the overall goal. And so it begins by taking care of your health now. And so if you're a little bit older right now and you're on these medications, I shared all these studies with you in this Patreon thing. So just as an overall thing, what I'm going to be doing there on Patreon is adding one of these new ones a week. And so there's 4 different tiers, and I think it's $4.99 a month, $14.99 a month, and $29.99 a month. And for the $4.99 a month, there's 1 protocol per month that you'll get. For the $14.99 a month, there's 2 protocols per month that you'll get. For the $29.99 a month, there's 3 protocols that you'll get per month with links to all this stuff that I'm talking about, as well as access to me once a month. We'll be doing live Q&A sessions, and we may even bring in someone else, who studies, different aspects of health. And we're just going to be answering your questions. And so this is going to be going on, and it's really exciting. I'm really excited about this because this is something I've been wanting to do for years. Because I always get a question like, oh, I've got, macular degeneration, or I have problems sleeping, or, I just had surgery. How can I heal my bones? And I've got all these ideas in my mind of what I would do if I had that. And so what I'm doing is just laying them all out with the data, with the research, and with the links to the actual substances, with all that information there, things to avoid. Because sometimes, just avoiding certain things will help heal someone, right? So the key things that you need to avoid. And so I'm putting all this into a sort of one paper that I'm doing, and it's going to be in PDF form, filled with data and filled with links to the substances as well as everything else. Because I found too also that, like, with this kind of stuff, you can, like, there's books about all this kind of stuff, right? And I like to read those books, and I like to listen to lectures and read. There's nothing boring about boron. Most people don't want to read that stuff, and they don't have time to read a whole book, and they're just like, I've got the XYZ issue. What do I do? And so I list out here's some protocols you may want to try. Definitely avoid these 6 things. You definitely want to start with these 7 minerals, and then after that, add these on. And here's some exercises you can do. Here's some treatments you can do, whether that's transdermal treatments through the skin, or subcutaneous through IV therapy, stuff like that, like really unique things that you can do for all kinds of different health challenges. So that's what I'm doing on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy it. And right now, if you join, it's, let's see, what is this? October of 2022. So we're not going to be charging anything until I think December 1st is when we're officially going to be opening. So if you guys want to get in on that, just go to our extremehealthradio.com/Patreon. I'll put a link to it on today's show page, extremehealthradio.com/751. And so I'm basically just going to be adding stuff to it, and there'll be no charging. It's just a monthly charge, but there'll be no charges going out until December. And that way everyone starts clean, everyone starts fresh, and we're going to be starting and launching December 1st. That's the goal, 2022. And so it's going to be a fun group, and you're going to want to have access to these because I'm tackling major health issues. I'm going to be doing once a week these protocols as well, or these guides. And you can download them and save them and all that kind of stuff. Or if your mom has osteoporosis, you can send it to her, that kind of stuff. So it's all going to be there for you. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for listening. And again, I'll put links to much of what we talked about at extremehealthradio.com/751. You guys rock. Thank you for following me on Instagram. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. If you want to support the show, you can always go to our store, biochargeme.com. And, if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, that helps too a lot. That's really, really helpful for us so that we get, more reviews and more people can find our information. And then if you want to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, that's great too. And that's about it. Yeah. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.